I'm always looking to engross myself in an interesting new fictional universe, so I took interest when two separate people in my life, neither one of whom knows the other, both turned out to be listening to Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, an old graphic novel series from DC that also happened to be coming out with a Netflix adaptation very soon. Both of these people had independently good things to say about the story and character. Taking that for its word, I knew absolutely nothing going into this Netflix series aside from the fact that the graphic novel is apparently decent. In general, it's been a while since Netflix has put out something good. A lot of others seem to agree, and it's been reflecting in the markets. Netflix is rapidly losing ground to other streaming services. Its stock has been in freefall. Basically, knowing that Netflix desperately needs a win, combined with the general positive reception around the Sandman graphic novel, I went into the show with careful optimism. That first episode blew my expectations out of the water. I was immediately pulled into the universe. I thought the production design and music was top tier. I felt that the writing and plotting in the first episode, which had a story spanning the course of an entire century, was executed in an excellent manner. The show seemed very promising from the initial premise it set up, and I was so excited for where the show was going to go that I confidently began telling all of my friends that The Sandman was going to be the next big thing. I even posted on my story that the show was phenomenal. And then I kept watching. And let me just say, The Sandman turned me into a fucking moron. It might have even ruined my entire reputation of recommending shows. The Sandman squanders its interesting premise, bringing instead a woke, bait-and-switch storyline with boring characters and horrific dialogue. This might genuinely be among the worst shows I've ever seen in my entire life. Yes, it's that bad. Now let's examine precisely why. In order to understand what makes this show so bad, it is important to understand what makes that first episode so good. I'm not sure if it's the same writers and directors behind the first episode, or if maybe they blew their entire budget and had no idea what to do after that, but it does genuinely feel like two completely separate shows down to the costume and hair design, but particularly in the script and the plotting. The first episode actually sets the premise of the series quite nicely. The amount of story that they managed to tell within that first hour really impressed me. The idea that humans attempt to kidnap Death, but kidnap Dream instead accidentally, is fascinating. The way this first episode explores its consequences on humanity, a lifetime of Dream being in captivity, was thought-provoking. I also thought the father-son themes were well handled. The Raven sequences in general are powerful and stunning. The moment where the Raven flies around the mansion to try and see where Dream is inside the house is probably the best filmmaking of this series. Of course, you have Charles Dance, who reprises his role as Harsh Father, and he does a pretty good job. And of course, there were some unnecessary gay moments that add nothing to the characters or story, otherwise known as pushing the message. But it's really nothing crazy. At least, not yet. Episode 2 was when cracks start to appear. The humor becomes forced, and the writing gets noticeably campier, but the themes of the show remain interesting, and the episode's runtime doesn't overstay its welcome. It's only 30 minutes compared to the hour of the first episode, so it at least appeared like the pacing was intentional, and I was still interested to see where they would take the story. I watched onward. Episode 3 was better than 2 actually, since it started setting up a character and subplot that I thought might give us a layered villain. The guy gets out of the mental asylum and is armed with some kind of magical amulet thing that makes people unable to tell a lie. That idea was kind of good on paper, and the character they were building up seemed like he could potentially be nuanced. So while still not as good as the first episode, I was down to keep watching. And it went to hell. Literally. The fourth episode is where the goofy, shitty writing took over, and never looked back. The Sandman goes to hell and talks to the devil, Brienne of Tarth, and then he gets into some bullshit with the other hell beings and they decide they want to fight, but the dude is a bitch, so he names fucking Lucifer of Tarth as his champion against the Sandman. Even if the writing has gone to shit, I'm over here ready to watch a badass fight scene at the very least. And then what happens? They don't even fucking fight. They have a glorified Pokemon card match. They attack each other with their words, pretending to be animals and shit, trying to one-up each other by representing different living beings, which I guess is supposed to be a battle of the minds or something. The writer for this scene definitely thought it was the most clever dialogue ever fucking written, but it came off to me at least like two 5-year-olds trying to roast each other. She literally counters, "I am a world," with, "I am a Nova." And then when he counters that with, "I am a universe," this bitch then hits him with, "I am anti-life, the dark." It sounds like kids trying to insult each other by naming the next biggest thing they can think of, ending up in the universe because no shit. The fucking universe? Okay. Did anyone actually proofread this script? I was really hoping the bootleg battle in hell would be the show's low point, but holy shit, it was just the beginning. It gets even wilder than my wildest expectations. That is episode 5, The Diner. The fucking diner. Where to begin? Jesus Christ. For a masterclass in stupidity, please watch this episode. It takes what might have been an otherwise cool concept, a mental asylum patient with a magical amulet that can prevent people from lying, and it turns it into a disturbingly dumb gay agenda violence porn. Talk about a shameless display of the message. This entire episode, set in a diner, seems to be arguing that if human beings were left to their own devices without any sort of socialization or impulse control, they would all be gay and homicidal, I suppose. The stupidity here is that the show tries to make this point completely unironically. It seems genuinely oblivious to the absurdity it had just embarked on its viewer. It is truly wokeness at its worst, wrapped up in self-indulgent dialogue that believes itself to be far more clever than it actually is. You can tell the writers and directors of this episode believe themselves to be producing some kind of work of art, an embodiment of philosophy and human understanding. So clever as to set the whole script in one location with these flawed, tragic characters waiting for their lives to be unraveled by a magic plot device, like they just wrote the fucking Fly episode of Breaking Bad. The sad thing is that the premise actually could have been good in the hands of a halfway decent scriptwriter. Now maybe this episode is faithful to the graphic novel, I'm not sure, but even if that's the case, my criticisms of the story stand. And so, with the diner episode as a clear turning point, I wondered how much worse the rest of the season could actually get. Lo and behold, it can get much, much worse. The second half of this season isn't even worth a plot summary, because like I said before, it feels like a completely different show. The show gets so fucking terrible, they managed to make the diner episode look like Pulp Fiction by comparison. The writing gets so bad, it seems like they just gave up. It's outright horrendous. Even the CGI, which was pretty good in the first couple of episodes, and at the very least acceptable, turns into something outright horrendous. Sandman himself isn't even the main character anymore. They bait and switch on us. They use him as a way to introduce who the show wants us to believe is the real main character, some girl named Rose, and her superpowered younger brother who's apparently the real Sandman, or something like that. I'm not even sure. This is where the show really lost me. Again, maybe the graphic novels are like this too, but I find it very flawed to change the main character halfway through the season. Sandman doesn't even look the same anymore. It's like, costume and hair-wise, they got completely new people. By the end of the show, he's looking more like Discount Edward from Twilight. And why is this the new main character? Where did she come from? And who is this as the new villain? Who designed this set? This set looks like something out of SpongeBob. What the hell is this thing doing on my screen? What happened to that mental asylum patient they were building as a villain? They completely drop him in favor of this person. It was around the diner episode that I did begin to wonder why I had ever started watching this show to begin with, but by the end, when a terribly written, blandly acted, forced black female main character stole the spotlight from the Sandman in his own show, I knew that it was beyond hope. The new villain laughably cringed too. What even is this crap, and why? Why is what I want to know. Is this from the fucking graphic novel? What these production companies fail to realize is that diversity for its own sake does not make a show good. If they want to force feed their agenda down a viewer's throat, they need to do it in a much different way. Representation is great, but it must always make sense to character and story above all. By usurping the main cast of the show halfway through the season and replacing it with bland, stupidly written box check caricatures, Netflix has done a sincere disservice to its viewers and fans. Do you want to know why everyone is unsubscribing Netflix? It's because you put out shit like this. I hope that one day the market wakes you guys up to the reality that nobody wants to see this crap. Until that fateful day, there will always be folks like me consuming these shitty series, chewing them up and apart, doing our part for the online, content-churning, entertainment industrial complex. But perhaps one day, these studio executives will hear our message. Nobody is impressed. Nobody wants to see this. The people should not continue to reward production studios that squander established properties. This show had immense potential, and it is with that I sincerely apologize to all of my friends who started watching this show on my recommendation. Netflix, you made me look like a fucking idiot.